When I play Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, I have a chance to win a progressive jackpot that starts at $40,000 and grows from there. So yeah, I'm ready to
play ball!
Make the right call this season and play Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery.
Good morning, Baltimore. It is Thursday, April 9th, and welcome into the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside Ravens reporter Sam Cohn. Sam, it hurts to be calling you in virtually here as I'm out in Chicago. You were down in Owings Mills today. It was a crazy day for both the Ravens and the Orioles, so unfortunately not in our studio, but you're looking good over there.
It's great to see you, Matt. I did want to start by sharing that I texted you a couple hours ago with an idea for tonight's podcast about something that we could talk about and that we're going to get to later for Ravens. And you had a response that with the thinking that we could do this in person. And I was like, Matt, you know you're in Chicago, right? And you were like, oh, shoot, yeah, I guess it's been a long day and we're doing this virtually. I was like, am I missing something? So it's great to be here. And yes, I guess it's been a long day. So how are you doing? Are you okay?
I mean, if it had been possible, I would have flown back just to get into the studio with you. But unfortunately, Southwest flights here out of Chicago, not great, leaving me staying here an extra night. So I'll be flying back Thursday morning. But yeah, it was a crazy day, crazy week. Orioles, after getting swept over the weekend, sweep the White Sox here in Chicago. A lot happened, especially here on this last day. So we're going to start with the leading news of the day, and that is unfortunately some bad news, and that is Zach Eflin underwent season-ending UCL reconstruction surgery, also known as Tommy John. He had been out in Texas getting a second opinion, so obviously a tough blow, but one that was kind of expected here after Eflin was so quickly ruled out, placed on the IL, and moved to the 60-day. Kind of felt like that was happening, that was heading in that direction. But certainly now the Orioles know for sure they won't be getting Zach Eflin back, and his future just as a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball up in the air now as he goes through what is one of the most grueling injury rehabs in any sport.
Yeah, it stinks. I mean, this was a guy who, same thing last year, obviously not to this extent, but similar situation last year where a really, really good pitcher who had a lot of his season derailed by injuries. I think most of last year was lower back, if I'm not mistaken. And 32, someone that they figured could kind of be an anchor in that fifth spot to their rotation. There were a lot of high hopes for him raising both the floor and the ceiling. I think you would put it that way in a story you wrote this week about him. And for it to happen, for him to undergo surgery on his 32nd birthday, he turned 32 today, or did he turn 33?
On Wednesday, 32. Yep.
So
tough way to ring in the new year for you.
Happy birthday, Zach Eflin. Sorry your party was so lame. Yeah, it's a bummer. But I guess my question to you, Matt, is this was a huge, the end of the rotation was such a huge question coming into the season. How does this change things now that we officially know? Because there were some rumblings that this was obviously a possibility anytime there's elbow injury. Tommy John is always a question. Now that we know this officially, his season is shut down. How does this change things?
Yeah, now that there is no Zach Eflin, all eyes are turning to Dean Kramer, who just made his second start with AAA Norfolk on Wednesday, went 4 2/3 innings, so getting his arm built up as well. And, he's not coming off of an injury or anything, but certainly has not joined the rotation as of yet, mostly due to a scheduling problem with when he was lined up to start versus when Eflin's spot in the rotation opened up. The Orioles have kind of patched it together so far. Brandon Young made a start there, was excellent on Monday in the series opener against the Chicago White Sox, and now Cade Povich is expected to make the next turn of the rotation on Sunday against the Texas Rangers. So it looks like we won't be seeing Kramer until probably that next turn of the rotation. The Orioles do go about a week and a half, 2 weeks without an off day in there. So I would imagine they try to slot him in and maybe push everybody back a day just to get him into the rotation, but also to keep him on normal rest. So we'll see how exactly that shakes out here over the next few weeks. But truth be told, it's going to be Kramer who is going to be filling that number 5 role for most, if not the rest of the regular season. And now, the Orioles not necessarily have starting pitching as a need that you potentially have to think about heading toward the trade deadline, but certainly they are one starter down and one more injury closer from really having to go deep into their depth than they would probably like to this earlier into the year.
Yeah, Matt, we spent the last episode talking about, it is so early in the season, but there are genuine concerns, and we're going to talk about Kyle Bradish's quote-unquote childish mistake that he made on Wednesday, but there were concerns about, we've talked about the concerns of this pitching rotation. Does this make you more concerned? How much, I guess a better question, how much more concerned? Grade the state of the pitching rotation right now as you see it with Zach Eflin shut down for the year.
Yeah, I mean, Eflin was a guy that I certainly had high hopes for as a guy who, had that back problem that was a chronic back issue, had to undergo surgery in August, and now was finally pain-free for the first time in years. You thought maybe he can get back to being the guy who just a couple of years ago was getting Cy Young votes, and now you don't have that element. And Kramer, certainly does provide some stability for a back-end spot, but he's not necessarily the kind of ace upside potential that Zach Eflin provided. So now the onus now falls on Trevor Rogers and Kyle Bradish to really be those guys. Bradish so far underwhelming in that regard. 3 starts now, an ERA over 5, so hasn't really gotten his fastball command down yet. Had a bit of a rough start to Wednesday's game. Was able to kind of hone in, but then kind of fell apart there in the 5th inning. So we still haven't seen Kyle Bradish at his full powers just yet. Trevor Rogers is that guy, but Chris Bassett has gotten off to a poor start, and Shane Baz really hasn't pitched super deep into a game in either of his 2 starts to begin the year. So we're still seeing this group kind of rounding into form. It says a lot that in a series against the White Sox where Kyle Bradish and Trevor Rogers started, the best starting pitcher performance of the series came from Brandon Young, who is probably the number 8 guy on that depth chart. No, and it was great to see that from Brandon Young, and certainly I think he's going to be playing a factor for this team down the stretch this year. Making some spot starts here or there, maybe earning his way into the rotation at some point. But to see Rogers kind of working through some things. I mean, I'm ready to call him an ace. I think that even on a day that his stuff wasn't the best, still had a quality start, went 6 innings, gave up 2 runs. So a good performance nonetheless. But the rest of the rotation right now, everybody has some level of question mark that they're trying to answer at the moment. So it truly is a wild card. And with the lineup still not exactly at the peak of its powers right now, kind of also rounding into form, they're definitely going to need the rotation to figure things out quickly.
You mentioned Bradish. I think we should probably touch on the day that he had, the frustrating day that he had, and again, that childish mistake. I think it would be super illegal if we ripped the footage and put it on the podcast. So, Matt, can you do your best to describe what happened and then and just share a little about what he said afterward?
Yeah, it was the 5th inning, and Kyle Bradish had given up 2 runs to that point and had just issued a walk to load the bases. Now, Bradish, as I said, has an ERA over 5 so far this year, has been frustrated with his performance at times, and it all kind of boiled over in that moment after he walked that batter to load the bases. Adley Rutschman throws the ball back, and Bradish kind of sticks his glove out, misses the ball. It rolls past him, and he doesn't make a big effort to get after it. Well, it's a live ball, and Chase Mydroff, the runner at third base, White Sox second baseman, was paying attention, good heads-up play, makes for home. Bradish realizes it too late, picks the ball up, overthrows Adley, ball gets away, runners both advance to second and third as well. Just an all-out disaster that actually ended up being ruled as 2 separate errors, so Bradish was assessed 2 errors on the play, 1 for dropping the ball and 1 for throwing it, just to account for the way that each of the guys went. And I clipped up here Kyle Bradish and manager Craig Alvarez's comments after the game, so I'm going to play them here for y'all now.
Just frustration came out, unacceptable. That's just childish behavior, and that will not happen again.
That play shouldn't happen. With KB, I know KB is frustrated. We talked, he's frustrated. He owned up to it, and we had a good conversation.
Was it a productive conversation with you and Albie?
Yeah, I mean, I went up to him right after in the tunnel, and we talked about it. I voiced my frustration with myself, and nobody's going to be harder on that than myself. And he knows that. The team knows that. But like I said, that will not happen again.
So as you can see there, Bradish did take accountability for his actions. Obviously, something that they addressed right away with a meeting in the tunnel between him and Albernaz. Albernaz clearly didn't look happy with the play, but obviously Bradish took ownership of it, both with Albernaz, but also with the team and media as well. So he said all the right things. It's just now about dialing back that frustration. Can't let it boil over. We talk about Gunnar Henderson a lot and how he will be slamming bats in the dugout and breaking things after he strikes out, but it isn't something that really seeps into his play. The next at bat or the next inning, he doesn't let it boil over. Just kind of takes it out in that moment. That's where Bradish is going to have to show that he can do that moving forward now that he did kind of let this seep into what could have been a costly run. At the time, it was the go-ahead run for the White Sox. He lucked out that the Orioles were able to storm back the following inning and get the win from there, but it could have certainly come back to haunt them had they not been able to generate any more offense.
Yeah, ball comes back to Bradish, and I don't want to say he's got this kind of smug look on his face, but you could tell he's pissed. You could tell after that errant throw, like he was upset. And he kind of makes a half-assed effort at the ball coming back to him, smacks off his glove, dribbles onto the grass, and suddenly he's alert. Now he sees like, oh shoot, this guy's running, and it's not a great look. But as you said, like we talk about Gunnar, and he doesn't let that seep into his play. And Bradish is someone who has been through a lot. I mean, this is him. This is real chance to show that he's still got it post Tommy John. This is a fresh start, a clean slate for him. And this was supposed to be a year that could be his real, I don't want to call it a breakout year, but really like get right, get back to form kind of season. And the first couple weeks of the season have not unfolded in the way that he expected, or frankly, a lot of people were probably hoping. A lot of the fan base was hoping that he could be, if Trevor Rogers, if we're anointing him the ace of this team, Bradish was supposed to be 1B. There were conversations all throughout spring training of one of those two guys is going to be the opening day starter. And a couple weeks into the season, it looks like they made the right call. Trevor Rogers is playing up to his billing. Bradish has not gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, and I mean, Bradish's ceiling is as good as any pitcher in baseball, and that's including, Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal and, Trevor Rogers, who, over the past two seasons, among players with at least 20-plus starts.
I don't know if we're ready to put Tarek Skubal and Trevor Rogers in the same sentence yet, but I hear you. Keep going.
Maybe one day Skubal can get there. Lowest ERA in MLB over the past two seasons among pitchers with at least 20 starts. That is Trevor Rogers. So the numbers speak for themselves. Obviously, needs to show he can do it over the course of a full season. But as I tweeted yesterday, I'm ready to call him an ace. It's something I was holding off on a little bit, just using that title, because I think that title has to be reserved for the elite few guys who have proven that they can, from start to start, season to season, be relied on as true number one guys. And I have seen enough. I'm calling Trevor Rogers an ace. No reservations about that. Now, just looking at this Orioles series as a whole, obviously a big bounce back for Baltimore after being swept over the weekend by the Pittsburgh Pirates. They win 3 in a row. It is their first winning streak of the season. They had not won 2 games in a row heading into this series yet. When they go out and win 3, they are now back to 500 heading into their 6-game homestand with games coming up against the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks. So obviously a good get-right series for the Orioles. We saw Taylor Ward continue his very hot start, 3 doubles in the series finale. He actually now leads Major League Baseball in doubles, up to 9 on the season. All 9 doubles have come in the last 8 games. He's the first player in Orioles history to hit 9 doubles in an 8-game span. 3 players had done it 8 doubles in an 8-game span, so he breaks that record and now stands alone. I'm calling him Taylor Two Bags. It's a nickname
about
stemming.
Taylor Ward. We got on this very podcast a couple days ago, and I asked you, Matt, who is the guy? And granted, I'm not ready to say like this whole get right series. You played the White Sox, but that being said, they did win a series, which is great. And I asked you again on this podcast, who is a guy who people might not expect, who's going to be the one to help them, just kind of give them something for a couple games to show that this team still has it and isn't going to let them fall off the rails. And you said, I'm going with Taylor Ward. You're right, at least this week.
Yeah, I mean, he takes professional at-bats. I saw somebody tweet this, and unfortunately I can't credit them, whoever it was, but it was a great tweet, that anytime Taylor Ward steps to the plate, you can just add 6 pitches to the opposing pitcher's pitch count. because that's just the kind of player that he is. He's going to work deep counts. He's drawing walks when the pitch isn't there for him. But when the pitch is there, he's putting the bat on the ball. And, no home runs so far this year. A guy who's coming off of a 30-homer season, you expect to see that start to work in his favor. I think certainly the conditions have played against him the last few days. It was very cold in Chicago. That second game on Tuesday was tied for the third coldest game in Orioles history. It was freezing. But also the wind in Chicago is it's Chicago. So a couple of deep fly balls were being knocked down. Yeah, it definitely is not conducive for home runs there right now here in April. So I expect to see Taylor Ward in the power department continue to even improve. But so far, he is settling for doubles. And like I said, I'm calling him Taylor Two Bags. That's a reference to Tony Two Bags, Anthony Rendon, back when he was a very productive player for the Washington Nationals. Obviously, that did not pan out with Los Angeles, but maybe he has transferred some of that power over to Taylor Ward, who is a doubles machine in his own right, coming off a season when he put up a pretty lofty total, doubles total for the Angels as well. So that's maybe an underrated part of his skill set, is just being able to hit balls in the gaps down the line to be able to get to second base, get in scoring position. And the Orioles made a little bit of change at the top of the lineup there. Taylor Ward had been the leadoff hitter every single game leading up until Wednesday. Then Craig Albertaz decides that he wants to move Gunnar Henderson up to the leadoff spot and move Taylor Ward back. And what that stems from is after the 11 or so games of sample size that the Orioles had seen, they saw that opponents were bringing in left-handed relievers to face Gunnar. It was, after they would wait until after Ward had hit or whatever, and then they bring in the lefty for Gunnar. Now, if someone brings in a lefty for Gunnar, they are going to have to face 3 straight right-handed hitters right behind him in Taylor Ward, Adley Rutschman, and Pete Alonso. So that kind of setting up there, especially with Blaze Alexander in the number 9 spot, or Kobe Mayo in the mix there, Jeremiah Jackson, all right-handed hitters. I mean, you're looking at Gunnar amid a sea of righties. So if you do decide that the Gunnar is the one guy you can't let beat you, and you got to bring in a lefty to get that advantage against him, you are putting yourself at a massive disadvantage for everybody else that you are facing either before or after him.
Then you start playing chess. And what did Blaze Alexander say the other night? And I do want to hear your thoughts on Gunnar finally starting to heat up, because he had a few frustrating days, and he finally gets a big moment there. Blaze Alexander said after the game something to the effect of he's the guy you want at the plate. He's the guy who's always going to have the advantage. He's the guy who's always going to be the one to make the play. And it was exciting to see him finally step up and do that thing that we spent all of spring training and especially through the World Baseball Classic of saying he's going to be the one who in a big spot is going to give you the hit, and he did it.
Yeah, basically the quote was, "I want this guy up." And, in any big spot, Gunnar Henderson is going to have the advantage over the pitcher that he's facing, because Gunnar Henderson is truly one of the elite hitters in Major League Baseball, left or right-handed hitters, position aside. He is somebody that if you're starting a franchise today, he is going to be among the very select few players that you are going to pick to get your team started. So, it's definitely good to see Gunnar, who had 2 home runs in the series, each of the first 2 games, including on Tuesday, a go-ahead 2-run homer in the 8th inning that helped them complete a comeback there against the White Sox in the middle game of the series. Really good to see him do that. It was also against a lefty, that home run. So for him to go left on left, he's actually been better against left-handed pitchers so far this year. Much smaller sample size there against lefties and righties, but has a couple of home runs off of them. All last year, Gunnar Henderson had only 3 home runs off of left-handed pitchers. So far this year, he already has 2. That's a great sign, especially after the way the World Baseball Classic went, and he was benched in that championship game because there was a left-hander for Team Venezuela on the mound. Is this a shot at Mark DeRosa? I don't know, but certainly to see Gunnar come back after what was not an injury-plagued year, but an injury-slowed year, I'd say, dealing with a shoulder injury that limited his power. For him to be flashing that early on, even after a bit of a slow start, is a great sign that he is back to the Gunnar Henderson of old and somebody that is really going to drive this lineup. Now, a couple of small minor updates before we switch over to Ravens. Just want to run through some injury notes here. Jackson Holliday is down in AAA Norfolk right now, doing his rehab assignment from hamate bone surgery. And, he told the Virginian Pilot that he is, quote, working through some things and still managing pain in his hand right now. Not exactly pain-free, which doesn't sound great for Holiday coming back. Obviously, they want to get him healthy in the lineup. They have a full season. They can afford to be patient with him, and so far they have, giving him 2 weeks here in Norfolk to get going, get his timing down since he didn't have a spring training. But to hear that he is still dealing with pain, coming into a season that really is an important year for Holiday, didn't necessarily have the best year last year, took a step forward from what was a really tough rookie season, but you wanted to see maybe more consistency from him at the plate. The on-base percentage and the power kind of go up simultaneously. It always felt like one was at odds with the other last year. To see now that he is dealing with pain in his hand, hamate bone surgery has a tricky history of sapping players' power, and you wonder if that is going to be a lingering effect here whenever he does make it back into the Orioles lineup. So still no timetable on when we might see him in Baltimore, but certainly something to monitor here as he has not exactly been tearing off the cover of the ball in Norfolk. Also, Dietrich Enns and Yaramil Geraldo both landed on the injured list, 2 guys in their bullpen. I just want to talk about Enns for a second. Landed on the IL with a left foot infection. Apparently his foot got super swollen in Pittsburgh, and he actually had to go to the hospital for it. He is in Chicago, or was in Chicago. Saw him with it all wrapped up. He's still throwing, which is good, but to be hospitalized with a foot infection just sounds absolutely nasty. So how they're going to fill that left-handed reliever role might be with new trade acquisition Nick Raquet, spelled racket, but pronounced Raquet, who was acquired in a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals, left-handed pitcher who only has 2 MLB appearances under his belt, but it is kind of an interesting path. He was just 4 years ago working in finance, an accounting firm in D.C., completely out of baseball. Only throwing he was doing was just with his college roommates that he was living with and throwing against a net. And then he was a former draft pick of the Nationals, reached out to some people in the player development system that he had made connections with there. They helped him develop a program, goes to play indie ball, does well there. It gets signed by the Cardinals, and now is on a major league roster for just the second time in his career. So interested to see what he can do. He described his repertoire as a lot of spin, doesn't throw particularly hard, but does have a sweeper and slider that he throws very often. So I think you can count on a decent amount of breaking balls in that repertoire. So we'll see how exactly they deploy him out of that bullpen. We did not see him pitch in Chicago, but maybe perhaps this weekend. So that about wraps us up there with Orioles. Sam, any final takeaways there from what you were able to see from afar in Chicago?
Looked like some life. Doesn't really count as life when it's against the White Sox. So I'll give it a few more weeks, maybe a couple more games in a row where they start to show some juice, and I'll believe it's real. But it was positive to see it. Maybe it was like in the way that college football teams and basketball teams schedule a cupcake game early in the season to kind of figure things out. Like maybe this helped just get a little confidence back, figure things out for them, and we'll lead into the next thing, because that's so much of what baseball is just momentum. Stacking 1, 2, 3 solid outings can lead to the next. So I'll believe it when it's against a more talented team.
Yeah, perhaps against the Rangers and Diamondbacks this upcoming homestand, 2 teams that aren't necessarily powerhouses by any means, but both have playoff aspirations this year. So certainly can see those as measuring stick series here as the Orioles really attempt to get rolling for the first time and maybe turn. I'd say a 3-game winning streak is a winning streak. It's barely a winning streak. 2 games in a row, not a streak. 3 games in a row, I'll call it a winning streak. But we'll see if they can make it 4 and beyond here in Baltimore. Let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about your crazy day out in Owings Mills.
Every spring when the Orioles start hitting homers, you know it's time for Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, with a chance to win cash instantly and other great prizes. But this season, the game is even better. Enter the Second Chance promotion through My Lottery Rewards, and you could win a new bonus prize, a VIP game day experience, including premium seat access. Enjoy the game you've always loved with a whole new way to win. Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery. Please play responsibly.
All right, Sam, the Ravens offseason program got underway this week. Just as we post our episode asking, will Lamar Jackson be there? Lamar Jackson, within an hour, we find out, is there. So obviously was big news on that front for him to be there, but you did not hear from him today, but you did hear from several players and guys who were meeting coaches in person for the first time, including Zay Flowers, Kyle Hamilton, and Mark Andrews. So what was kind of the biggest thing that stood out to you from those three guys?
You mentioned them meeting these guys for the first time. I think that was probably the most interesting question that we got to hear, because this is the first time players openly talked about, not on a podcast, not on some ESPN segment appearance, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first time that they faced local media and were asked directly about, hey, you have a new coaching staff, and what do you think after spending a few days with them? Zay Flowers said he has spent time back and forth between Baltimore and South Florida, and he's been popping into Declan Doyle's office and popping into Jesse Minter's office. And obviously, we've talked about Zay Flowers was at Camden Yards for opening day with Jesse Minter, so they've built a rapport. But Mark Andrews said that he really met these guys in person and spent time with them for the first time earlier this week. I think same thing goes for Kyle Hamilton. So that was, I think, some of the most interesting stuff, was just hearing initial reactions to the time that they've spent with Jesse Minter, Declan Doyle, Anthony Weaver, and getting to know the rest of the staff. So I guess let's just start with Declan Doyle. Zay Flowers said that Lamar is excited to work with the new staff and excited to work with Declan Doyle, and he's eager to chase a ring. And one thing I thought that was interesting was Zay Flowers, too, said, they come in on Monday and Tuesday, and so much of phase one is meetings and workouts and just getting a chance to, learn a little bit about each other and do a lot of these introductions. And Zay Flowers was, shocked by how prepared this new staff was. We heard Jesse Minter talk several times throughout this offseason since he was hired, saying, it's a sprint to April 6th. And clearly they nailed that sprint, because Zay Flowers' first thought was man, they had everything. They had everything lined out in PowerPoints about scheme and about plays and formations, and more important than all that, how they were going to learn all that stuff and how the schedule was going to work. And all this stuff was ready to go. And Zay Flowers was shoot, they were ready to go. And Mark Andrews had said something along similar lines about Declan Doyle, to say that you can tell he's dynamic, he's fiery, he loves the energy, loves football, and that Declan Doyle really prides himself on being a teacher. And Mark Andrews, who is 6 months older than Declan Doyle, really values what he's learned from him so far. And I think in a lot of these situations, you're going to hear players just effuse praise and always just say nice things. But to their credit, Mark Andrews, he seems like he's great. He didn't say, I love the guy, I'm obsessed with. He wasn't just going over the top, obviously saying things that he doesn't necessarily believe because he just met him and he just wants to say a nice thing. But he was I got a good first impression. He seems like he's really great. I'm seeing this in him. And the headline, I think, out of today was hearing Mark Andrews was asked about what a Declan Doyle offense might look like. First time Declan Doyle's calling the plays. Mark Andrews was we're going to be electric. Based on what he's seen from Declan Doyle in the past, based on what he's spent the past few days with him, he said, we're going to be electric. And Zay Flowers asked about that afterward, and he said, yeah, we're going to be a lot of fun. Declan Doyle is going to be a lot of fun to play for. This is going to be a really fun offense. They're going to be able to take deep shots. They're going to be able to get a little creative. They're going to try stuff. They're going to value the run game in the same way they always have. And Declan Doyle has talked about that. But he also wants to bring something new and fresh and exciting. And I was going back to the transcripts from today. Do you know how many times Zay Flowers said the word new? You want to guess?
How many?
He answered.
Oh, man.
Let me give you this. He answered. I want to say he spoke for 7 minutes. Let's say it was
7
12
minutes.
questions, 13 questions.
I'll say a dozen times.
He said 9 times.
That's still a lot.
That's still a lot. And 3 of them were in one answer. And Kyle Hamilton, I think, said it 4 or 5 times. And Mark Andrews might have said it once. There is a new energy, and if nothing else, these guys are really embracing it. It seems like they're really excited about this fresh start. All of them did say, how they found out about John Harbaugh's firing. Kyle Hamilton was playing video games, and his wife, I forget if they've already got married, ran into the room and was like, holy cow, John Harbaugh just got fired. And Kyle Hamilton was like, all right, let me take a second, we're flat. That's crazy. And he took some time to kind of reflect on the past 4 years, et cetera, et cetera. But they all acknowledged how much John Harbaugh meant to their individual careers, but all sounded really excited for what was coming next, what was going to be new. And I think that was one of the other interesting takeaways was Kyle Hamilton was the only defensive player we heard from today, but he was asked about just getting to know Jesse Minter. Kyle Hamilton's, obviously Lamar's the face of the team, but Kyle Hamilton's the face of that defense. And he is one of the best defensive players in the National Football League. You know, he was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he's going to mean a lot to this defense, and he can be a piece that Jesse Minter has at his disposal to do the things that Jesse Minter wants to do with this defense. Kyle Hamilton was asked, like, hey, now you've spent a couple days, like, what's your first impression of a defensive-minded coach coming in? And he was excited about noticing things might be different without changing everything. I have the quote here. He said, it would be very un-Ravens-like to veer away from the norm that much, to kind of just blow it all up, just create a whole new philosophy, which, I mean, makes sense to me. He said, it's new and it's good, and that makes sense, and he likes it, and great. Kyle Hamilton, very articulate, one of the more articulate players in that locker room, super thoughtful, super smart, and he had this sort of winding answer to say that it makes sense that the Ravens picked someone, and he was saying that he talked to a few friends with the Chargers when John Harbaugh got fired, and they were all like, Minter's your guy. Jesse Minter's going to be your guy, which was a belief around the league, but obviously wasn't a certainty when the Ravens are interviewing 20-some-odd people for that opening. But, yeah, Jesse Minter sounds like, again, just I guess to harp back on so many conversations we've had here, you and I, about the expectation, prognosticating that Jesse Minter is going to be the guy who comes in and maintains what it means to be a Raven and has meant for the past 30 years, but can also not tear down the walls while also bringing in some fresh blood and some fresh ideas. The face of the Ravens defense said on Wednesday, that's exactly what's happening, which is great. And we're going to get a better sense of what that looks and feels like as we see these guys in pads and see them on the field a little bit more. But that's really what's happening. So, again, there were just throughout hearing from those three guys, there's a lot of interest in the new and the excitement and the fresh energy.
And we also saw the Ravens tease some new jerseys and once again put out the next flight slogan once again.
This.
So
they're leaning into it.
They're leaning into it, both from a marketing standpoint, but also it seems to be, as you say, new is seeping into the message that the players are regurgitating as well. So, it's not hard to see why guys in that locker room were probably ready to turn the page, even if they wanted Harbaugh back. Like, once everybody came to terms with the fact that, okay, we moved on, we got a new coach, like, things didn't end the way that players wanted things didn't end the way players wanted them to for years now in the playoffs, with mistakes that were just easily correctable and fluke things that happened. To be able to kind of turn the page, wipe the slate clean, have a new coaching staff come in with fresh ideas, I think that in the end, a lot of guys are going to be happy about that and embrace the message that Jesse Minter is setting.
There's also a really important level of honesty that we were told is already happening. Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver both came in and said, you guys did not meet the standard of Ravens defensive football. Kyle Hamilton said as much, and he said it's nice to have a familiar face in Anthony Weaver coaching that defense. He's excited about that. He was like, in 2023, that was a darn good defense. Maybe he was the missing piece. Maybe he's the guy who can come back and get them back to that spot. So excited. He said that group's excited about what they're seeing from Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver. I should ask Matt, New Jerseys, is this something that excites you? Do you care about this kind of thing?
I do. Like, the fashion aspect of sports is fascinating to me, because it's trying to fit what is very manly, and it just kind of goes against the idea of fashion. And I don't know, I'm interested in it to just see like what's new, what it'll look like on TV, that kind of thing. Like, we seem to be having City Connect jerseys coming for the Orioles. There's been maybe some leaks online and speculation of what those are going to look like. They've been teasing all of the Camden Yards connections to it. So I think it's a fun opportunity to show what your organization values in terms of like things that you were willing to wear on your chest, whether that be the color schemes, but also just the designs aspect. So I'm open to being excited about it, but I feel like I'm a harsh critic and oftentimes don't like new jerseys when they're dropped and new helmets and logos. So it has to hit right away, and I reserve final judgment for when I see it on the field because it definitely looks different from a model wearing it in photos.
Agreed. Artistically, it's really cool. I think it's a fun part of sports as they get to lean into aspects of the culture that they can use artistically to put on the product on the field. That said, I've long subscribed to the belief that all jerseys are good because they look cool when the athletes wear them on the field. Like in most situations.
I don't know, man. As a Wizards fan, I hate the Wizards jerseys. They don't look good on the players, so I think it can look bad.
So this is what I was going to say. My favorite jersey concept is the color rush jersey. Like if I'm playing Madden or I'm playing I guess 2K doesn't really have. If I'm playing Madden or something like that, or college football, and you can customize the jerseys, I want same color top and bottom. I've always loved the color rush, even if it's the stupidest mustard color.
Mustard, ketchup and mustard game, yeah.
I want the same color top and bottom. And generally, I'm like, jerseys are cool. Like I don't feel that strongly. I don't feel like I have strong opinions on jerseys and such. And then I saw the Ravens like they did they had like a new logo with the purple helmet with like the weird logo on the head, and their alternate jerseys I wasn't crazy about. But like I love the all purple and I love the all black. I think it's cool. So I'm interested to see what they come up with.
We will see. We got some news and notes here, so let's run through them before getting into our first NFL draft segment. Zay Flowers was asked a question about his future in Baltimore and his contract, which obviously with the fifth-year option looming, potential extension perhaps. What exactly kind of insight did he offer?
As expected, he did not entertain the question, gave the classic, I'm going to let my agent handle that. But he did say, didn't really stutter to say he absolutely wants to stay in Baltimore, wants to stay a Raven, team that drafted him, loves being here, great relationship with Lamar. So makes sense to hear him say he, quote unquote, absolutely wants to stay here.
You also, in addition to the three players that spoke today, heard from strength coach Scott Elliott, and he talked about Trey Hendrickson, among some others.
Yeah, we saw the Ravens put out a few clips from the first couple days of these workouts. Scott Elliott is really the one charged with leading so much of what they're doing in terms of workout and any physical stuff. So we did get a few minutes spent with him today talking about a couple different guys. I know you and Josh, a couple episodes, talked about Mike Green. He had some positive things to say about the confidence in Mike Green to take that sophomore year jump. The reason being that he comes in as a rookie with worrying about so many other things, the timing right after the draft, et cetera, all this pressure. Year two, it's just such a normal schedule for him. He doesn't have to worry about all the ancillary stuff of being a rookie. So he's excited about the progress that he's made. But the one that I put in our notes and I thought was really interesting, and to your question, Trey Hendrickson called him a physical specimen. He said, you see that guy work out and you understand why he's had so much success, and it gets you excited for what's to come and where he's going. And it's been 2.5 days, and he called him a physical specimen. I thought that was funny.
You don't become the NFL sack leader by not standing out in the weight room. So certainly it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've seen clips of Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald absolutely tearing it up in the weight room. So those, I mean, they're another level, but it is also what I would hope to see from my star edge rusher that I just handed a massive contract. So
that's
definitely good to hear it from the guy who is charged with making sure that remains the case. But Kyle Hamilton is also doing into Pilates to accentuate his offseason workouts.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton was asked, that dude's an Iron Man. It's ridiculous. You'll see him take a hit, get hurt in some capacity, and you're like, oh shoot, this could be really bad. He's back on the field 3 plays later. That was such a theme of last year, or a conversation that kept cropping up, because it felt like every time he got hurt, he was just back on the field so quickly, and the pain tolerance in that dude is crazy. But he was asked, you did deal with a lot of injuries last year. Have you changed anything in your approach? And one, he said Pilates gotten into, and two, he's just spending so much more time focused on recovery. And he was talking about Pilates. He was talking about how Scott Elliott wanted him to work on his posterior chain, which I think is your spine, if I'm not mistaken, like on your back. And so he's explaining a little bit about what he's thinking about in terms of his recovery. And Scott Elliott was standing behind the media contingent. I could kind of see him between a couple people just smiling in the back, listening to Kyle Hamilton talk about this stuff, which was funny. But Kyle joked, like, maybe I should just start following around Derrick Henry because it seems Father Time is being stiff-armed by that guy. So that is an important part of Kyle Hamilton's career trajectory. Again, he's one of the best players in the league, and he called himself 25 going on 50. He's about to be 25, and he's getting to that age where when you are a quote-unquote physical specimen like Trey Hendrickson, like at a certain point, that only goes for so long until you really need to start amping up your own, just the way you take care of your body to maintain a long career. So that's something that Kyle Hamilton's really focused on this offseason.
Yeah, and he certainly plays a position where you take a lot of big hits with guys running full speed, so not a position where you're able to avoid that very often. So certainly good to hear. And I can remember multiple times of big injury scares from Hamilton where, oh man, like he's down, like going in the blue tent. And like you said, right back in there next drive, and you're like, how did he do, how? Like it doesn't make any sense, but that is a testament to the kind of player he is between the lines, in addition to being one of the best all-around defensive players in the NFL, regardless of position. Anything else, Sam, from today you wanted to hit on?
No, I think that was everything. That was the gist of it. Just genuine excitement for what is new in Baltimore and being with these guys. We know that Lamar was there on Monday. It is unclear whether he was there Tuesday or Wednesday, but obviously a very interesting and intriguing storyline to follow every time we will have some availability or that the Ravens will post anything, whether or not QB1 is there. So that was a big one. But yeah, across the board, just it seems like the early returns on this new staff in the first couple days in the next flight are all positive.
We will see how long they can keep that going for. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the draft here. We've been waiting to talk about the draft. It's something we brought up several times wanting to talk about, but have held off. We are now, as of this episode coming out, 2 weeks away from the draft in Pittsburgh, with the Ravens holding the number 14 pick in the first round. And we wanted to, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier of my brain fart, pull out the crystal ball. I was thinking we have a little helmet laying around somewhere in the office. I was like, oh man, we can use that as a prop and read the helmet as our crystal ball. Well, it would be pretty difficult getting that out here to Chicago.
Yeah, I was like, am I
Can't
supposed
do
to
that.
have one in my apartment? Like, that's something I don't know
I mean,
about.
yes.
Do you have one lying around?
I'm kind of disappointed you just don't have one on hand, to be honest, but I'll let it slide this time. But we're going to each give 3 predictions, and Sam came up with these categories, really like them. One will be a prediction rooted in logic, so probably the most likely scenario we see happening with the first round, as well as one prediction rooted in the desire for chaos, because who doesn't love chaos? Fun to jump down some rabbit holes. And then one prediction that would be impulsive but exciting. So not something that the Ravens tend to do, but something maybe more in the realm of possibility than absolute chaos. So let's start with reality before we start going down rabbit holes, Sam. What is your prediction rooted in logic for the Ravens in the first round of the NFL draft?
So to be clear, yeah, all 3 of these we decided we're just going to do first round draft predictions. So my prediction rooted in logic, I think it's been trending this way for a while. I could see them pivoting off it if the cards fell a certain way, but it feels like they're going to stick with the number 14 pick, and they're going to use it on Penn State's Olai Vaenga-Ioane for short.
You nailed that.
I wrote a couple weeks ago that Ravens fans should probably start learning how to pronounce his name. Coming out of the combine, he was the most mocked to Baltimore player. He was such a popular name, and obviously those things change so much between the NFL combine and going into getting into April and March through April. Those things change a lot. So, but Vaenga-Ioane is a natural NFL-ready guard. The reason I say pivot off is because maybe they look at a guy like Spencer Fano from Utah, who played left tackle and right tackle in college, but at the combine was like, I'm willing to move. I'm willing to play a different position. I'm willing to try something new if it helps my career trajectory. He's super athletic and capable of making that move. I think that would be like if they envision him playing some center, or they could try to move him to guard. This feels like just take the guy who's NFL ready, who's big, who's thick, who can move guys around, who can be the person. I mean, we just saw Wednesday, Daniel Falele signed a 1-year deal with the New York Giants. Following John Harbaugh to New York, Ravens fans presumably rejoiced. He was the most criticized player on the roster. I'm sure Ravens fans were hyped to see him go. This was always the conversation of the Ravens need to find a replacement at guard. Take the best guard in the draft, Venga Ioane at Penn State. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of teams tend to shy away from taking guards early in the first round just because not as a premium position as tackle, but with the Ravens feeling pretty good about the tackle position, can kind of afford to reach a little bit as far as a premium position-wise and take a guard there to really solidify their interior, which is trying to pick up the pieces with Tyler Linderbaum leaving for Vegas, but also just how poorly they had their guard play last year. So certainly any of the guards being mocked in that kind of range would make sense in Baltimore. And, with you having inserted your predictions before me, probably where I was heading. So I will move over, stay on the same side of the ball, but go to the wide receiver position. I really like this wide receiver class. I think there's a lot of intriguing names in this group that would be available to the Ravens at 14. So I'm going with Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. I think he would be this #1 wide receiver in the class if not for some lingering hamstring injuries limited him to just 9 games last year at 711 yards and 8 touchdowns. But we've talked a lot about how the Ravens lack pass-catching help behind Zay Flowers, and obviously if they're going to be locking him up long-term, are going to need guys on cheaper contracts to fill out the rest of the roster wide receiver-wise. So to get a guy with your first-round pick, have him on a rookie contract alongside Flowers with an aging Mark Andrews, I do think that there would be, for Declan Doyle, who, as you talked about, wants to take deep shots, I think Jordan Tyson is a guy who could be a great fit for this offense and somebody who would add a new dynamic element to the Ravens offense that they really haven't had the last few years from a pass-catching standpoint.
Matt, I like it. I think they need it. I think it's a position they address in some capacity. I would not, as you're saying, I would not be surprised if they did it in the first round. But it is worth mentioning that today, and I don't think this necessarily changes things because there is a very real possibility that they grab a receiver in the first round. But I forgot to mention in our just news and notes and headlines, Zay Flowers kind of called his shot and was really confident in Tez Walker taking a big step this year, going into year 3, having something of a breakout year. We heard Eric DaCosta at one point give some praise for what his belief in Tez Walker is, and him and Rashad Bateman. Tez Walker has, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, it's like 7 catches and 5 touchdowns. He could be a big-bodied receiver that they feel confident they can take a shot down the field with. But, and I asked Zay this today. I was like, we've seen him catch several touchdowns, but what are you seeing behind closed doors that makes you confident that, this is the year? And he said that Tez showed up to Baltimore year 1 and a little anxious, a little nervous, a little timid, just got to the NFL, not super ready, whatever. Now he's got a fire under his butt. Now he's like, I'm coming for it all. Now he's ready. He's a little bit more mature. He's excited, and he's going after everything, and he's attacking. So interesting to hear that. I'm not saying that should necessarily change their plans, but if Tez can be that guy and then you also bring another receiver, suddenly you're looking at the receiver room a little bit differently.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. If I'm in a situation where I'm looking at Tez Walker and Rashad Bateman competing to be the number 3 receiver on this team, I feel great about that. Between the two of them, I think they are certainly capable of being that guy. We've seen more than flashes from Bateman. We've seen extended stretches of him being that kind of receiver before maybe disappearing from the offense altogether. Like you said, Tez Walker, a big body receiver who can make plays in the red zone. I think both can add a good element to this offense. But to be looking at the two of them to step up and be the number 2 wide receiver, we just went through that last year, and it didn't work out. And not to say that they didn't show signs of being that guy, but I think you have to, I think we saw it with the Bears last year. They had plenty of receivers, pass-catching guys in that offense between Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet and DJ Moore, but then they go out and they draft Colston Loveland and they sign Keenan Allen, or Keenan Allen had just left, but they go out and draft Colston Loveland as another pass-catching tight end guy to add to that offense. Maybe somebody that you wouldn't necessarily need week 1, But by the end of the year, with injuries and where things shake out and guys taking a step forward like Loveland himself became such a key part of that offense, I think you just want to be able to cover yourself for a long, grueling season and make sure that you are covered in a similar way that baseball teams do with starting pitching. So I would want a guy like Tyson just to, if it's not the first round, I think, like I said, this is a pretty good draft for wide receivers. Maybe they go in the second round to fill that need or another day 2 pick. But certainly would like to see a pass catcher taken on day 1 or 2 to fill out that room for the Ravens. Now let's move on to second prediction. And this one, rooted in the desire for chaos, Sam. Where are you going with this?
Okay, I got a little weird, and I definitely don't think this is going to happen, but I think it would be funny. New York Giants interior defensive lineman Dexter Lawrence requested to get the hell out of New York the other day. Contract disputes, he's not happy, he wants to be traded. So, prediction rooted in desire for chaos. The Ravens trade their first-round pick, something they showed with the Max Crosby deal they were willing to do for the right kind of attacking, violent defensive lineman. Send away capital to the New York Giants, get a guy who doesn't want to play for John Harbaugh. Not that he doesn't want to play for John Harbaugh. Get a guy who doesn't want to play in New York and take him away from John Harbaugh, because remember that the Ravens claimed that they wanted to pair Trey Hendrickson with Max Crosby. Now imagine a world where you deal your first-round pick, and let's say that they learn some things about Nnamdi Madubuike and that they don't feel as confident, hypothetically, about his ability to return. That's sort of the only path that would make this even remotely a possibility. To be clear, we do not know any more specifics about Nnamdi Madubuike's situation. Scott Elliott did say on Wednesday, he's been working his tail off and he's in great shape. It's just a matter of we'll see. So, chaos, go take Dexter Lawrence from John Harbaugh, because John Harbaugh took, I don't even know what the count is at, probably in the double digits, Ravens, and pair Dexter Lawrence in the interior defensive line with Trey Hendrickson and really beef up that pass rush.
I love it. I just I have a hard time seeing Harbaugh being willing to trade the Giants' best player back to his former team, even if it does net him a first-round pick. And we understand that Harbaugh is kind of calling the shots there in New York now. So maybe he wants the assets. He wants to maybe not have to hit a full reset with this team and be able to build on the fly, and that would go a long way in helping that. I get it. But, man, would that be, optically wise, one of the craziest trades, maybe in NFL history? A parting gift on the way out. Would that change the way that Ravens fans see John Harbaugh? Like, as far as the way things ended,
maybe,
got a little sweetener.
They'd be like,
I don't know.
We're okay. We're okay with the way
cool
things
now.
ended. Yeah. After hearing John Harbaugh say that 2025 is one of his best coaching jobs, and Ravens fans being like, "What the hell are you talking about?" They might be a little bit more comfortable with how things ended if that deal were were to ever happen. But again, this is rooted in the desire for chaos.
You promised chaos, and chaos we received. And I'm also looking here at some chaos, and that is in the form of Jeremiah Love. The running back phenom out of Notre Dame falls to the Ravens at number 14, and the Ravens let him fall no further. Love is a player often mocked into the top 10, but running backs are a position that teams typically do not want to draft very highly, and we have seen even some of the best running back prospects of the last decade fall later into the first round or even the second before they are picked. Now, Love is perhaps the best running back prospect coming out of the draft since Bijan Robinson, which isn't that long ago, but Bijan was the best running back prospect since Saquon, so he is among the elite guys that have come out of the college ranks over the past decade, and would be an odd fit for this team with Derrick Henry signed through 2027. But at the same time, Derrick Henry's getting up in their age. He might be stiff-arming Father Time, but at a certain point, he comes for everybody, and they would be prepared, especially after losing Keaton Mitchell to the Chargers in free agency. They'd be able to backfill that in a big way and have a running back room that would be the true envy of the NFL. It's probably not going to happen. I don't think he's going to fall that far. But, man, I have to think that if he's available at 14, the Ravens at least got to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, this tests their best available approach that they tout. And I think the chaos is less in hey, you get a top-tier running back in this draft class to be your succession plan to Derrick Henry. They don't have a running back on the roster that right now is the clear succession plan to Derrick Henry. The chaos in this is, okay, you draft a running back, you didn't address any of the top
any of
the top voids you need to
Do
fill
you then
on this roster.
trade back into the first round at the end with your other picks to try and get somebody there at the late end of the round? I think that could make sense.
Then things get real weird. So that's the chaos we're kind of. That's the chaos.
That's true. That's true. I didn't write that down, but I'm going to include that in my prediction here for the chaos. They trade back into the first round afterwards to address one of these positions because, as we've talked about, they have some very clear needs on this roster in running back. Not necessarily one of them. You're really counting on Derrick Henry to keep being Derrick Henry next year. That's okay. I think that's a gamble worth making. But I do think that Jeremiah Love is a special talent at the running back position, can catch passes as well as run up the middle, very versatile back in that way, and somebody who I think that if you have kind of both guys on a snap count, you could really get the most out of both players in situations that call for their usage.
Yep, and worth noting, Justice Hill, who missed the home stretch of last season, a great pass-catching running back, super durable, great blocking running back. The highlight of his career was Week 1 against the Chiefs. What's the Chiefs' defensive end name? I'm blanking. Chris Jones?
Yeah, Chris Jones.
Blitzed off the edge, and Justice Hill lit him up. Like he's a great blocking tight end, undersized guy, beloved in that locker room. So I think he's a guy you're excited about, but he's not the succession plan. And Rasheen Ali's just, you don't really know what you have in him. He was sort of on that weird rotation with Keaton Mitchell. He's still young. He's still finding his footing. And maybe in 2 years, he becomes your RB1 in a two-man rotation in that backfield. But I think just right now you don't really know. So if you can go get a guy like Jeremiah Love and it's available, it's certainly worth considering.
We talk about them needing pass catchers. That would qualify, even if it is maybe in a less traditional way. But you set up a lot of screens and swing passes and things like that. Get him in open space. He could do a lot of good things for that offense. So I think that would be a lot of fun. But last prediction here, and one that would be impulsive but exciting. I love that you kind of couched it that way. Not something the Ravens tend to do, as you say. But what is your impulsive but exciting prediction for the Ravens?
Yeah, the Ravens, let's start by saying the Ravens will not be impulsive. That's just not in their DNA. But trading into the top 10, moving up from 14 to somewhere in the top 10 to go get Miami's violent edge rusher, Ruben Bain Jr. Excellent off the edge. The big knock on him that came out of the combine is that his arms are slightly shorter than they should be. But anybody who watched a national championship, anybody who watched Miami all year long, that does not matter. That dude can get in the backfield as well as anybody. Oh my God. And the reason I say that it would be exciting is because you're adding another edge rusher, and the Ravens probably want to consider adding another guy at that position. The reason it would be impulsive is because they really don't need that if Mike Green is who they think he's going to be in year 2, and you're pairing him with Trey Hendrickson, and you have Tavius Robinson, that you do not need to spend that kind of capital. And the Ravens trading up into the top 10 is just absolutely unheard of. So again, impulsive, but if you have Trey Hendrickson, Mike Green, and Ruben Bain, those three as your edge rushers, that's a crazy rotation that would take your pass rush group from bottom of the league to instantly to the top, which is what we said Max Crosby could do. Or obviously, if they were to, hypothetically, they were never going to, but if they were to pair Crosby and Hendrickson, that would do. Or even Trey Hendrickson and Mike Green could make them a really solid, one of the better pass rush groups in the league, just pairing those two together. So it would be an exciting possibility to see those two plus one of the best pass rushers in this draft class in Ruben Bain Jr.
Yeah, and it would certainly take some pressure off of Mike Green to be the guy. And, you did take that off a little bit with Trey Hendrickson coming in as the true number one edge rusher for the team. But now if you can put him in a rotation where he's in positions to be fresh all the time, to be able to maybe go after some tired tackles and edge rush that way, making plays late in games with good legs, I think that and plus they would really just cover themselves depth-wise to make sure that is a position where Trey Hendrickson's coming off of a season in which he dealt with some injuries. Like, if God forbid he were to go down again, at least you're covered with two guys who are young and certainly offer a lot of upside. So, as you mentioned, would be tough to see them trading into the top 10, but that's what, not chaos, but impulsive for sure. And I think something that would be a really fun fit. Bain looked phenomenal in the national championship game, but also just all season for Miami. So a true force on the edge and one of the best all-around players in college football last year. I'm going with the trade up too. I don't know that they necessarily have to, but I do think that he will probably be going off the board top 10, I'd imagine. And that's Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon, who set an Oregon record with 51 catches last year. The fastest tight end at the 40-yard dash, 4.39 seconds. Fastest by a tight end since 2003. So a true difference maker in terms of speed at the tight end position. The Ravens have not drafted a tight end in the first round since Hayden Hurst. So I'm calling it impulsive in that it is, one, they might have to trade up for him, but two, it's a position of need. I've brought it up before, but I don't think it's at the top of the list by any means. And three, not a premium position once again. Something that when you're designing your team and you look at Mark Andrews already being paid like a top tight end, do you really want to also spend a first-round pick on that? I'm not sure that is the best use of assets as far as running a front office goes, but it would qualify as impulsive but exciting. And I do think that, like I just talked about, Colson Loveland was drafted in the first round by the Bears last year. Declan Doyle, under Ben Johnson, of course, but able to make great use out of him in that passing game. I think they could do a lot of good things with Sadiq as well, and obviously would become the heir apparent for Mark Andrews, who is getting up there in age despite the fact that they just recently signed him to an extension.
Between our 4 picks of chaos and impulsivity but exciting, this one is definitely the most, in terms of getting Kenyon Sadiq, is definitely the most plausible. But the impulsivity, as you said, is just they're not going to trade up for him. That would be the impulsive part. But if Kenyon Sadiq falls to 14, that's a very realistic possibility. As you said, it's not a premium position, and it's maybe not the best route. But tight end is a position that Jesse Minter said they plan to add at some point between now and September. They will add to that room, more likely another pass-catching tight end to pair with Mark Andrews. And as we've talked about, Declan Doyle does love a pass-catching tight end. He makes the best use out of him. So wouldn't be surprised at all if they do land Kenyon Sadiq. That would just be a matter of, does he fall to 14? Because whether it's Kenyon Sadiq or Jeremiah Love or this isn't going to happen for Ruben Bain, but these are top 10 caliber draft picks who, if any of them fall to 14, then we're having a legitimate conversation about best available, who's there, who do you like the most, what position are you looking to address or willing to address, even if it's not the number one? Because I think, again, going back to the logic part, yes, addressing the guard logically makes the most sense. But in the first round, if you're going for best available, if you're going for a guy that can help you immediately, yeah, it's Kenyon Sadiq, it's Jeremiah Love. Those guys can be immediate impacts, even if it is a little bit of chaos. But don't count on the Ravens trading up.
Can you tell that I think the Ravens need a pass catcher? Between my 3 picks of a wide receiver, a pass-catching running back, and a pass-catching tight end, it is definitely an area of need that I think would be prudent for them to address in the first round.
Yeah, I think I leaned defensive line, right? I guess I went a 1-0 line and 2 D lines.
1-0 line, 2 D line.
I was
You're in the
trenches.
trenches.
And you were the pass catchers.
Yeah.
Yep. I live in the trenches.
So, of course you do. All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and wrap there. Got more draft coverage coming up in the next few episodes. Super excited to be rolling that out as we get closer and closer to what is a huge, and as we've talked about a lot, very interesting draft for the Ravens, since considering they do in fact have their first round pick. So make sure to follow us. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and give us a follow. Engage with us over on social media. That's Twitter, that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, I guess, Shorts over there as well. Sam, any final words for the good people?
Just going to be spending the rest of my night cooking up chaos possibilities for the Ravens draft. That's how I'll just spend my time for the next couple of weeks.
Next episode is just full chaos. We're going
Yes,
no
yeah.
structure, no rundown. We're just coming in hot takes, just ripping them off left and right. Caleb
Great
Downs.
podcast material.
That's my favorite guy in the draft. If they had a need for him, I would have put maybe him in there. But all right, that's going to do it for Sam Cohn. I am Matt Weyrich. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.